Hey, now it's the Rob from 106.1 KISS FM here with my broadcast colleague.
Hey, it's Eric Cornish with WKDQ. That is my name, Eric Cornish. And we are here with another edition of the Enhancement Talent.
I feel like there's not a whole lot of news this weekend really worth talking about, so we came up with another topic to talk about here. I like when we do topics too. We're going to focus this time on wrestling books.
Yes, wrestling books, which I got to tell you have been a little bit on the decline since the network came along because, you know, we're watching,
right.
you know, our entertainment. But there have been several books that I enjoyed reading a whole lot, and we've got some good ones coming out here pretty soon. I know JR's working on one. And
Daniel Bryan's about to release one if he hasn't already. And yeah, there's still some modern ones out there. And I was recently, in fact, for my birthday about a month ago, my parents took me to Barnes & Noble to pick out a few things, and all wrestling books. One a coffee table book on the Attitude Era.
Nice.
I got this like weird comic book graphic novel thing on Andre the Giant. I have to show you that, by the way.
Cool.
It's like some of Andre's craziest stories, but illustrated as a comic book with a foreword by Mick Foley.
Huh.
And yeah, you'll have to. I never even heard of it. I'll have to show it to you, and some other good ones too. You want to get things started here? I feel like there was a beginning.
Yeah, there definitely was. I think, and I think you're probably thinking the same thing I am, and that's Mick Foley.
Right. I mean, there were wrestling books before Mick, but that's what started the craze. Have a Nice Day, I want to say 1999 or 2000, that book came out, and it changed the game completely.
It totally set the standard because... because it was so good, and I'll go ahead and say that one still is at the top of my list for wrestling books.
I'd put that as number one.
It is so good, and you can read books that are just put together because somebody needed to have a book,
right?
Like The Rock. I feel like The Rock was at the height of his popularity, but he didn't have too much of his past or in the wrestling business to talk about when he put it out. It was just he was hot, and anything with The Rock's name on it was going to sell.
That book was a mess.
So you have your Ghost Rider there, and talking about The Rock, whatever. But when Mick Foley decided he was going to sit down and he was going to handwrite his own, he hand wrote that book, and ended up putting it out. It was gold, and there's just something about his personality that made it so good.
It's safe to say that without Have a Nice Day, there wouldn't be at least half of the wrestling books on the market today.
Yeah.
It became a New York Times bestseller. That had to be a first time that ever happened. And it was the right time for this. It was like Mick Foley was hot, as you say. Like, people wanted a book from him. And he had a story to tell.
Absolutely. And he's got one of the best stories there's ever been.
Yeah, and a voice that speaks well, lends well to writing, and the right amount of humor and seriousness, and a good amount of introspection, like looking at himself and stuff like that. Like he was the right person to do this.
Absolutely, absolutely. So.
And he said a few thereafter that I feel they decline in quality, but still good.
Yeah, I would say, to be honest with you, I mean, Foley is Good, which is his second one, near as good as the first one, and probably still in my top 5 list.
Others in my top 5 would include, I loved Bret's tome, Bret Hart's. It was a huge book, a really long book.
It was.
But he also had a good story to tell, and he wasn't sort of bound by any companies. Like, people were just interested in his straight story. He wasn't afraid to talk crap about somebody, and anytime, one thing that was great about Bret's book was anytime he mentioned a wrestler, even casually, he put a little snippet as what he thought about that person. Yeah. We were hanging out with Bam Bam Bigelow, one of the greatest big men I loved working with. He was so light on his feet. And then would go on with the story.
Right. I will say this about Bret's book. It wasn't one of my favorites of all time, but what I do like about Bret, I don't like people that start, for example, let's talk about Eric Bischoff, Controversy Creates Cash. That has been Bischoff's strategy, in his entire life, except when he wrote the book. Because there was no controversy in that book whatsoever. Bret is not afraid to put a little controversy in it. Now, I'm not saying I'm looking for everybody to bury people, but what Bret did was not only if he didn't like somebody or had an opinion about somebody, he put it in there, but he also wasn't afraid to put himself out there and talk about his misgivings and his, the things that he did wrong in his life. And
especially as a husband.
Exactly. And that's what makes that book so good, I think.
Yeah, I did really appreciate that book because Bret was a guy, he does have that stuff fueled up inside of him. Just has a lot of anger in his, at least back then. He seems happier now. Other great books. Did you ever read Dynamite Kids?
I didn't, but that sounds like a good one.
Yeah, Dynamite Kid, another angry guy, but
totally.
was around in a fun time for wrestling. And then, like, when he got his injury in his back, he was very resentful, and the book takes a change in tone there. Piper, I thought, did you ever read his book?
Piper's is really good. My second, you haven't mentioned my second favorite, and that's Jericho's first book.
Oh, I did. I've read that recently.
Yeah, Lion's Tale. That is, that's probably second to Mick's first book for me.
Yeah, Jericho, he's got another good voice for writing, and like I feel like he wrote the whole thing. Like that, I like that out of the book.
Yeah.
I feel like I can tell when someone's
hear his
ghostwriter
voice
takes.
in it,
yeah, and you can feel like I can tell when someone's ghostwriter takes over. Jericho's was a lot of fun too. I love the '90s, and like Jericho and also Edge, who had a good book.
Yeah, Edge was good.
Edge, I feel like both those guys could have been my friends growing up.
Yeah.
Like both like video games and heavy metal music and rock music and you know
silly names for all their friends.
Yeah,
that kind of stuff. Yeah,
it's like that. That reminded me of my group of friends. What do you think about? I bet you we both like this one. I loved Lawler's book.
Lawler's book was very good. Yeah, that was in my top 5 too.
I didn't realize that. Also, like us, he was into radio and a radio DJ, and talked about that for a little bit, and you know, talks about his time in Memphis and then WWE. A great book.
One of my favorite stories in that book happens just down the road here at the Coliseum, where Andre comes in, and you know, Andre was known for having this win streak or whatever, and so they brought him in, and he said, well, "What are we doing tonight, boss?" And Lawler goes, "Well, I'm thinking I beat you," and you know, Andre, he's just like, "Okay, boss." I mean, he, you know, and now had Vince Sr. known that was the case, Vince Sr. would have put a stop to it then. So, but of course, you know, Lawler knows business. He knows how to do business, and so he brought every guy in the locker room to take Andre down, and Lawler ends up getting the win. Well, you know, when the wrestling magazines got wind of it, they actually published the headline, "Andre the Giant beaten by a midget." And they called Lawler a midget, and but that actually happened right here in the Coliseum, a couple blocks away.
Yeah.
So I thought that's a really good story in that book. I've got 2 books right now that I'm in the process of reading, and I haven't gotten really into them yet. But Shawn Michaels has a new book out. His first book was okay. I
read Heartbreak and Triumph. That was decent.
Yeah. His new one, it kind of visits his spirituality and how it relates to the wrestling business. And I'm only a couple chapters into that. That's actually pretty good so far. I'm kind of digging that. He talks about leading up to his retirement, the matches with The Undertaker, things like that. And then, you know, he kind of throws in where his spirituality came from. And then the other one is Jericho's new one, Best in the World and What I Had No Idea. I've got that book, haven't even opened it yet, so I'm looking forward to that.
I'm about to crack open Hardcore Holly's book. I believe
Great
you read
book.
that.
I've read that. Awesome book. I'll give you another one that's kind of out there. That you wouldn't expect to be good, it really was. Gary Michael Capetta's got a book out.
Read it.
Oh, have you?
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
What's that one called?
Man, I can't.
It's older though. I read it in like 2004.
Yeah, that's a good one because he's been around too as one of the announcers. He was one of the main announcers in WCW for a long time.
Which reminds me, Heenan has 2 good books out.
Yes.
If you want to learn about some wrestlers from yesteryear and the way that they lived and died, Tributes by Dave Meltzer is a wonder. It's just like his obituary issues, which are like his biggest ones, and they just like kind of take the text and put it into book form. What are some other must-reads for wrestling fans?
You know, not autobiographical, but a book like that I really, really like, and it's one of those ECW presses, not the ECW in Philly, but they're the ones that make all those books. Is The Death of WCW
by R.D. Reynolds.
Awesome.
And the WrestleCrap
and
guys.
they've redone them. They've redone that book recently, so I'd like to go back and get a new copy to see what they've added.
I have a signed copy of that book.
Very good.
They also have one called WrestleCrap, The Worst in Wrestling is Here, which has some of like the goofiest gimmicks in all of wrestling. Those guys are funny. I like those guys a lot.
Yeah, so if you've got a book that you love that we didn't mention, please let us know. And if you're out there and you're a wrestler who's written a book and you want to come on the show, let us know too, because we'd love to have you.
Absolutely. Our emails are available right here at the bottom. And let us know what your favorite wrestling books are, some must-read for wrestling fans.
Can you believe this? In the last 2 episodes, we've revealed that wrestling fans not only know women, but we also know how to read.